Well, welcome to another episode of my Wake-Up Call. You know what the deal is. I get to bring you people who are up to all good. One day I hope they balance out the people who are up to no good, but we're not talking about those people. Although sometimes we badmouth them together with my guests, and we have a good laugh about that. But I don't think we're going to do that today with Jennifer Hill. I have to tell you this, Jennifer Hill and I love each other. I'm a mentor to her, and she's so loyal. I mean, I was honored at a gala in New York. She came to that. I spoke at a TEDx. She came to that. But this is not just a payback. You'll see how special she is. She's an author, a speaker. She's a media personality in her own right. She's an entrepreneur. She created her first company in 2009, which was later acquired in 2018. She published her first book, Stop Hoping, Start Hunting, A Job Seeker's Guide to Finding a Dream Job. Published that in 2013. Just completed her second book in a 10-part series called 101 Spiritual Tools for Uncertain Times. She has her own weekly radio show. She's had me as a guest a couple times, and she needs to raise her bar on the kind of guest she has. I don't know how she let me in. Anyway, but she joins us from London, even though I know her from Los Angeles. And I just think the world of her. And I'm going to ask her the question I ask everybody, which is, what matters most to you? And if I'm listening in, I'd be curious about the transition between Stop Hoping, Start Hunting, A Job Seeker's Guide to Finding a Dream Job, and now it's 101 Spiritual Tools for Uncertain Times. So there's got to be something that happened between those jobs, and you can tell the sirens, the ambulances, they just want to know her answer.
Well, Mark, I'm going to keep you waiting, my friend. What are you going to do about that? No, I'm just teasing. Mark, I'm sure this probably happens to a lot of your guests, given who you are as a human being in the world and just the astounding, open-hearted, kind, warm human being that you are. But you had me at hello. Like, I started tearing up the moment you just opened the show, because you hold such a special place in my heart, and you literally saved my life, my friend. Literally. We met, it was random, because I remember hearing how highly you were recommended from the stage of a conference I was at, and the speaker said, "Don't buy my book, buy Mark Goulston's book, just listen." And everybody took their pen to the paper and said, "Wait, who's this Mark Goulston guy?" And I remember I left the conference, and the first thing I did was I Googled you and called you. And I said, "Mark, you don't know me, but I'd love to have you as a guest on my show, because I just hear wonderful things about you." And so to answer your question, Mark, as far as what matters most to me is making a difference. I remember two of my best girlfriends and I were at a spa day one day in Laguna Beach, and we were sitting around sipping champagne for one of the girls' birthdays. And we got into this deep philosophical question of, when you die, when you're on your deathbed, what do you want people to have said about you? And how do you see that going? And what I saw, Mark, without missing a beat, I told my best friends, I said, "Girls, I see that the world will be sad that I'm gone, because I've left such an impact, that I've given every last drop of my soul and squeezed it out to leave the world a better place than I found it." And that's what matters to me, is every single day. And that's the evolution, quite honestly, Mark. Is the name of my show, the radio show, is called Get Yourself the Job. And I keep joking, it's been going for 4 years now, that I should change it to Find Your Life Purpose, because it started off with helping people survive, getting jobs and writing a resume and doing an interview effectively. And then it morphed through the years, through guests like you and all of my incredible mentors, yourself included, who taught me that what's in our heart is so much more important, and that if we follow our hearts, we'll not only have lasting, sustenance for ourselves and our families, but we'll know that we fulfilled our purpose. And to me, that matters more than any job we could ever get, is fulfilling our purpose and being a contribution to humanity.
So if listeners know that I do this, I give sound bites to people. I say, here's your new show title. And sometimes people write it down and some people are offended, but so can I offer a show title for you to do?
Please. Absolutely. I would love that.
And it's called Meant to Be. And the subtitle is Discovering the Reason You Were Born.
I love it, Mark. That's brilliant. Hold on, writing that down.
Meant to Be.
I'm writing this down right now.
People talk about discovering the reason they were born. That's your show. Take that one to the bank.
Oh my gosh, my friend. Wow. Thank you for that. 3 minutes into the show and you've already given me the next chapter of the 30 years of my life. Thank you.
Yeah. I mean, you can flip it. Is it the reason you were born, but no, meant to be is what's that about? And then discovering or revealing the reason you were born or whatever. And so what it is, you talk to people and that could be the name of my show, but it's already branded as my wake-up call. So, if people say, you got 100 episodes and you can't, you're not going to re-edit the beginning of everything, or we'll do shows together. But that, I think that's you. And so what I want to unpack is, was there a time in which you said, I don't know that I'm making a difference and it's not the best use of me and I can't keep on going, living a life, not making a difference. I mean, it just calls out to me, Jennifer, you got to make a difference. You're not here because you shared that. And you said, what matters most to you is that you squeeze out every bit of your life into the world, not taking from the world, but giving to it and leaving it richer, more positive, safer. So can you unpack any of that? I recently interviewed someone a woman who had that wake-up call, and she said she just realized she was pretty successful, but there was this painful emptiness. She knew how to play the game, but it was just so painfully empty. And so that was kind of her wake-up call. But or maybe it was a gradual thing, or maybe you already and always knew I'm here to make a difference, and you didn't start acting on it until when you started acting on it. But can you fill in, you and how you either woke up or evolved in that direction?
Yeah. So Mark, it's been an evolution. One of the clearest moments of before and after, it's kind of like that Sliding Doors movie with Gwyneth Paltrow, where she makes the train in one version of the movie and finds her husband cheating and goes on. I'm not going to spoil the end, but in another version, she lives happily with her husband, but then is miserable in other ways. And one of those moments for me, Mark, was a personal development class I was in my early 20s. And I did it begrudgingly because my boyfriend at the time did it and had been like really gung-ho, like, you got to do this thing. And he had encouraged me to do it. So one day I signed up just to spite him. I signed up to prove that this whole personal development thing was a crock of crap, pardon my French. And I showed up and I sat there like arms crossed, glaring at people as they're getting like profound breakthroughs in their lives that day, right? And as this goes on, Mark, the class comes to a close, and that evening of the last night of the class, the instructor walks up to myself and my boyfriend, and she says, "Are you going to take the advanced class?" And I looked at her and rolled my eyes, and I said, "Sweetheart, darling, it was stifling enough having sat in this room the last 3 days. Do you really think I would put myself through this hell again?" And she looked over at my boyfriend and he's like, "Oh, don't get me started. It already took her 8 months just to do this one." And in that moment, Mark, I said to my boyfriend, I said, "This is an at-will relationship. You can leave anytime you want." And the woman paused and she looked at me and she said, "Can I be really straight with you?" And I said, "Sure, darling, go ahead. Be really straight with me." And she said, "You are a nasty thing." She said, "You are one of the most powerful women I've ever met in my life. And yet you are like Godzilla walking through a city with a huge tail swinging behind you, knocking down buildings wherever you go. Except guess what? Those aren't buildings. Those are people's lives you're destroying." She looked at my boyfriend and said, "Leave her. It's what she needs." And that for me, Mark, was one of the biggest, most pivotal moments of my life, of before and of after. Of I realized, oh my gosh, I thought I was a good person at the time. I would still help the homeless. I would volunteer. I thought I was good, but there was the shadow self that I didn't realize how I thought I was occurring in the world and who I was actually showing up in the world were two very different people. And that's also the evolution of this latest book, 101 Spiritual Tools for Uncertain Times. I've realized that we all have the capacity, Mark, for great light and great dark. And to answer your other question is this an evolution or was it a one-time thing? As recently as this morning, Mark, today, I spend probably 3 to 5 hours a day in spiritual practice of different types. And I felt totally inauthentic even coming on the show today. I thought to myself, gosh, maybe I should cancel on Mark. I'm really not feeling good enough today. Like, I really don't feel like I'm making the difference I want to make, and I'm not adequate to be on Mark's show. And I, honest to God, thought about calling you and canceling.
Let me try to unpack this, because these shows, what is it? You can take the boy out of the country, but you can't take the country out of the boy. Well, you can take Dr. Mark out of being a therapist, but you can't take the therapist out of being Dr. Mark. So can I tell you what I'm hearing from you?
Yes, go right ahead.
Especially with that story you just said about this woman. And I think the wake-up call was, I don't see myself as someone who wakes up intending to hurt anyone. I don't wake up saying, who can I hurt? Who can I swing that tail and destroy? And there was a part of me that had the arrogance, well, since I'm not intending to do it and they get destroyed by it, that's their problem. But the point is, I have the capability in me of destroying people that way. And what they all have in common is me. And it so goes against the loving person, the kind person that I want to be. And part of my spiritual practice is that I still have shadow parts of myself that I'm aware enough can be hurtful, not intending to be. And when I discover they have been hurtful, not intending to be, they can come back and take me to a dark place. Take me to a dark place where, whether you meant it or not, you hurt another person. And Mark, I don't want to go to that dark place because I so don't want to hurt people. And so my spiritual practice helps me kind of keep it in check. My spiritual practice gives me, the control freak, the chance to surrender. Mark, I love to be in control, but it's exhausting. What I would love to do in my spiritual practice helps somewhat. So I would love to just let go of control safely, because being in control really helps me cope. And coping is better than not coping, but it's not healing. It's coping. And Mark, part of my journey is I want to heal myself. It's interesting. I'll share a story of a recent podcast and why. And I'll introduce this person to you. So there's a woman named Diana Hendel, and she has a book called Responsible, a memoir. And she was the CEO of a hospital in Los Angeles. In 2009, one of the beloved employees came in the department she grew up in. She was a student in the pharmacy department, grew all the way up to CEO. That was her whole professional life. And so one of these beloved employees came in, killed two of his bosses and himself. And what happened is her story, which I'd recommend people reading, is, how she managed through that. When you're a CEO, you can't allow yourself to feel feelings, because people are looking to you. You enable them to feel their feelings because they need to. When you say to yourself, should I share what I'm feeling? No, I'm the CEO. What I want to do is give them a place to feel their feelings, but I'm the CEO. And what really got through to me is in 2015, she said, the hospital was in good shape financially. I had gotten it really back on its feet. And I decided, and they would have loved me to stay on. I was a lifer there, and I'd taken them through these awful times. And she said, I had the realization that they deserved a fully healthy CEO, and I wasn't that. Mm. So I resigned, and then I went and realized I had PTSD, and I went out and got it treated. So now she consults to companies in trauma. But what I'm hearing, from you is your own journey. And it may be that the spiritual practice is a way to keep the unintentional part of you that can sometimes be too dismissive or bottom line to people, intending to do good, but unintentionally hurting them. And you don't like that part of you because you're a loving person. And, this is kind of where you are in your journey. So can you track with any of that?
Yeah, absolutely, Mark. And I loved that podcast, by the way. I listened to it and I thought it was just so beautiful to hear her story. And there was something at the end, I think I texted it to you, that I really enjoyed about her realizing that she was awakening. And I think that we all go through this, and to keep consistent with what you were just saying, I feel like it's almost like this monster, this dragon or something that you keep in the dungeon. Like, okay, if I do enough spiritual work, I'll just keep this dragon in the dungeon at bay. And you had actually, as a friend, suggested to me at one point, Mark, early on in our friendship, and again, whether or not it's true or not, it did give me some sort of solace, as you said, Jen, listen, don't take this wrong way, but you might be on the spectrum. And at the time, I was like, what? And I remember looking up women with Asperger's and Aspian women. And that was one of the other things that actually really was a wake-up call for me, because for the first time ever, I didn't feel so weird. Like my whole life, I felt weird. Like I didn't feel like how, like you said, I might inadvertently hurt people, and that's the last thing I would want to do. But I just might be being direct. Like I actually have to go back, Mark, and I don't normally admit this to many people, but when I'm sending a text or an email to somebody, I have to go back and insert pleasantries. Like I'll write the email and they'll be like, oh, wait, first I'm supposed to check in with a person and say, how are you doing? How is your day? Because my brain just doesn't work on that level. And it's not out of being mean. It's just, that's not how I'm designed. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. I had a conversation yesterday, and I was trying to remember because the person said, you need to tweet this out, Mark. And I've been trying to figure it out. Because one of the things that I've discovered is my Jungian shadow. And the shadow is the part of our personality that we don't want to admit is there. Because if we admit it's there, it can cause us to feel shame. So people don't experience me this way, and I don't even really experience me this way, but I know it's in there. So my shadow has a chip on his shoulder, is judgmental, is petty, is a scorekeeper, is vindictive, all these things. And people will say, no, Mark, that's not you. Well, I've done a good job of staying on top of it and not letting it come out even into my own consciousness. But I think what I said to her is, I said, I'm falling in love with my shadow. And as long as I don't act on it, I'm good to go. Because everybody has a shadow. Everybody has a shadow. If you're listening in, sorry, you have a shadow. But the point is, if you can just say everybody has one, everybody way down deep is jealous and vindictive and yada, yada, yada. If you can accept your shadow, why should you? Because everybody has one. Just don't act on it. You're good to go.
It's funny you say that, Mark. I think I told you about this right around when it happened. When COVID first came on board and everything started happening, I was in Paris. And I started reading a book by Greg Braden called Divine Matrix. And it was talking about how the square root of 1% of the population meditating can shift the consciousness of humanity. And so right away, I felt this calling to do a global meditation. And I reached out to people who I knew at the time. And
Including me. Yeah. Yep.
yeah, you, Deepak Chopra. We had a huge group. You had tweeted it out to all of your followers, and we got many people, over 100,000, I think, meditating on that day. And before that happened, though, I was meditating and I thought, it would be really great to have the Dalai Lama involved. He would be amazing. He'd be such a beacon of light. And so I was meditating on it. And there's this thing I like to do, Mark. I think I've shared it with you. You're one of the few people I've shared it with, and I'm now coming clean about it in the book. I like to think of it as the light side of myself, not the shadow side of myself, but I call it soul talking. So there's this infinite wisdom out there, whether it's Mark Goulston's wisdom, Jen's wisdom, your own wisdom, the Dalai Lama's wisdom. And one day in deep meditation, before this global meditation took place, I reached out to the Dalai Lama and I kind of, in my heart, I said, Your High Holiness, is there any chance you would be willing to help us with this? Kind of reaching out from my soul to his. And I got a message that, it's not the right time. It's 12:30 a.m. for them there, but he'd be with us in spirit. And the message I got, Mark, was His High Holiness said, but first, in order to achieve the difference you want to make in the world with this, you need to stop seeing them as broken. You're coming at this global meditation from a place of needing to fix people. And you will never be able to heal others until you first see yourself as whole and then see the world as whole. And that was one of the most recent really big wake-up calls I've had, Mark, is I can see where, to your point, I see my own shadow self, I see your shadow self and the people around me, and it seems, or it occurs sometimes, like it might need to be fixed. But to your point, what if it doesn't need to be fixed? What if our jealousies, our angers, our inadequacies are part of the wholeness that makes each one of us the beautiful human being that we are? And if we can accept that in ourselves, that then gives us and allows us the capacity to accept that in others.
Oh, that's a lot. No, I think he's onto something, and it triggered an exercise that I'll share with you. I think I've actually shared it with you, and I think my listeners have heard it before. So here it goes. I'll ask people to think of their personality as a circle. And I'll then say, and if you're listening in, try this. And Jen's going, so she might try it too. And think of your personality as a circle. And inside the circle are the parts of your personality that are trying to prove, show, hide, or please. Prove something, show something, hide something, or please someone. So think of those being in the circle. And now eliminate all of them and what is left. And and if you're fortunate, and I think I've eliminated them, and if you're fortunate, as I was, what you'll discover is your true calling, what you were born to do, but you never heard it because you were so busy proving, showing, hiding, or pleasing, which is all a way of self-protection, defending yourself, but you can miss out on the calling. And I've done that exercise with many people, and some people will say, I remember one person said, I've never done it like that, Mark, Dr. Goulston, whatever. And I'll tell you one of the reasons I haven't done it is I'm afraid that if I eliminate those, there really is nothing. There's no there. There's no reason for me to be here. It doesn't make any sense. So what I'm afraid of is if I eliminate all that activity, there is nothing. And then if I see the nothingness so clearly, I'm afraid of where it will take me. I've been on a number of interviews, and what I've been saying, I've had a certain sadness about what people are doing in quarantine, because what I've talked about is I believe oxytocin is in danger of becoming extinct. Oxytocin is what causes us to pause, be tender, be patient, be compassionate, have no agenda, and be all about the other person. And once upon a time, oxytocin led to pleasure called dopamine. You actually fell in love instead of in lust. You actually had joy instead of fun. But what's happened is technology, I believe, especially the leaders of it, who aren't the best at connecting to people. They can hardwire people, but they don't know how to connect. Technology has addicted people to adrenaline. And so now adrenaline feeds dopamine. Dopamine's pleasure. And oxytocin's too boring. It's too slow. And so what you hear is being sold to people in quarantine. Hey, here's a way to keep busy. Here's a fun game. Oh, you can do this. You don't have to abandon your adrenaline. Here's a little game. And I'm not against that. But there's been a huge opportunity of why don't you get to know your family? Why don't you lower your guard, even if you're scared, and invite them to get to know you? Why don't we bring back oxytocin? We're in close quarters without the ability to get close. And again, I'm kind of like the tree that falls in the forest that nobody hears, but you've given me, since you're in London, you've given me I'm there like in Hyde Park on my bully pulpit, and I can scream this out because, there's no danger of anyone really listening to me.
Oh, stop it. See, that's the thing that I think you don't understand. Whenever I mention, I'll be like, oh yeah, I'm going to talk to my friend Mark. And people are like, Mark Goulston? I love Mark Goulston. I love everything he's ever written. I mean, Mark, your name is known far and wide. And I think you undermine how much value your words have, my friend.
Thank you. I'm flashing back. I had a late mentor named Warren Bennis, and he used to give me compliments. And I would get all neurotic all over them. And he said, Mark, 2 words when someone says something nice to you: thank you. If you start getting neurotic upon them, what happens is you become high maintenance. You're too difficult to give a thank you to, and they're not going to want to do it. So my dear friend, thank you.
You're welcome. And, you give so much to people. And I think that, for people in your position, Mark, I think that you give probably more than most people would give in a lifetime. You give your listening, you give your words, and you give your open heart. I think, to your point about oxytocin, giving another person an open heart rather than a closed heart and a wall is probably the greatest gift that we can give to one another right now, anywhere in the world at any time, but especially now with what's happening. I go for walks almost every day here in London to a different park, and I smile and dance. That's how I kind of keep myself balanced. I'll listen to music, stop and smell a flower, I'll dance. And sometimes I give, people give me side eye, like, who is this crazy woman dancing and why is she smiling? And, sometimes though it's contagious, and other people will start to laugh or smile in return. And I think that that's the greatest gift that we can give one another right now. There are so many things that we can do to be distracted. And you were actually an inspiration for me, my friend. I don't know if you remember, we were in your office one time when you were mentoring me, and you had said, Jen, what are you running from? Your whole life you've been running, and you're afraid that if you stop running, what will happen and what will become of you? And I remember that very specifically. There was a point when I was here in London, and I realized I just needed some stillness. So I went through 24 hours of silence. I turned off my phone, my computer, everything, didn't speak to anybody. And I stopped running, Mark, for the first time in my life. And I found a little slice of peace.
So I'm going to ask you a question that I now ask when I can remember it, my guess. What could you get even better about? So it's not a deficit, like what's wrong, you got to fix. I could get even better at such and such. And some of the answers I've gotten, and people will have to find the podcast. Well, you can check one. One was with Paul Ackers, a lean expert, speaks around the world. And we were having this great conversation. I said, what could you get even better at? And he said, I can still be a real asshole. And he smiled. I mean, it caught me by surprise. He loved the interview now, so he put that up on his site. his most unusual interview. And then there's another woman who has your energy named Lauren Zander. She has the Handle Group. She's unbelievable. And I said, what could you get even better at? And I think she said something about being more present.
Mm.
So what could you get even more better at?
Mark, something I think that is part of my life's journey and my opportunity for growth is to approve of myself. I think that despite the accomplishments and the things that I've done in life, there are things that we don't necessarily approve of ourselves of, and then we struggle to approve of others. And I was inspired one morning as part of my meditation practice. I was really clear on how much I was looking for approval from people around me because I was not approving of myself. And I said, you know what, Jen? You're going to sit down and you're going to write 100 things that you approve of yourself for. And it was painful, Mark. I sat there and I could barely spit out 3 or 4 things that I approved of myself for. And what was really present for me was all the judgments I had against myself. Oh, you didn't do this right. Oh, you spent too much money on that. Well, you really could have done that better. And as this list morphed, by the time I got to the 100th thing I approved of myself for, I was able to actually approve of the things that I had previously judged myself for. And I went through one by one at the end of it, Mark. I put my right hand at my heart. And then I read out loud, Jennifer Hill, I approve of, and I went through the list of the things that I approved of myself for, and that gave me great healing. And I know it'll continue to be a part of my life in an area that I can grow and develop in.
Okay, so I'm going to, what the heck? This is what I call God to Mark, Mark to Jennifer moment.
Okay.
I don't know that's God, but whatever God you approve of is speaking to me and telling me to tell you this.
Okay.
So, and I really mean it. So I want you to take this in, and we can see each other, even though on the podcast they won't see that. Here's what God to Mark and Mark to Jennifer wants to tell you. There is a there inside you that has tremendous value to the world, and it has less to do with what you do for the world or don't do. It has to do with who you essentially are. And there's a there, even at the times when you don't believe there is one, even at the times when you don't feel there is one, even at those times when you say, I can't find the there inside me, even at the times that it may scare you, but it's there. Just like we all have a shadow, I am telling you that there is always a light inside you of givingness and lovingness that is separate for what you do, got to keep busy. And there's nothing you can do to lose it. And there's nothing you have to do to earn it. It's just there. And just because you can't see it, hear it, or feel it, or believe it's there, doesn't mean it's not there. Do you understand me?
I received that, Mark.
Because it's very easy, if that's really important for us to believe is at our core. And when way down deep we believe it's not, we get scared. And we start this search looking for it. But it's a little bit like that exercise I talked about earlier. If we eliminate the prove, show, hide, please, all the activity, there's a there. There's something that's calling out to us. And it's there. And one of my commitments to you is I see it and hear it so clearly in you. It's crystal clear. And my commitment to you is to one day get you to be able to see it and hear it without having to think about it, without having to do a to-do list.
Don't tell everybody about my to-do list.
Really, where you can take a deep breath and say, I really exist. And the I that I am is a good person. The I that I am is a secure person. The I that is sometimes lost from my consciousness is there. So, part of my commitment to you in this relationship we have is it's just so clear to me. I see it so clearly. And there are times when you don't see it or believe it. And I'm not giving up on you finally receiving it. And on that day, it will quiet a lot of the stuff in your head. So can you accept that?
Thank you. I received that. I love you, my friend. Literally from the bottom of my heart, I feel like I'm just so deeply grateful for the day you came into my life. You see people's hearts. And I think people can live their whole lives and never see their heart, let alone somebody else's heart. And I think that you do. You speak to whatever you call God, source, whatever people tuning in call God or source, but you see it. And I can see reflected in myself that little bit that you're talking about, Mark. It's a glimmer. It's like a little mirror. It's a glimmer. I can see a tiny little light sparkling, but I can't see the full light. And I see that you see that in me, which gives me hope that I'll see it one day too.
Yeah, it's kind of challenging because, we're talking about being a human doing versus a human being. And you are a force of nature. And you are a force of nature. And you're, you know who wants to join us right now?
Who?
I don't know how he found this. Mark Victor Hansen.
What?
Oh, he just went away. I don't know what that was about. Maybe he'll call again. Because I interviewed him, and maybe he'll come back. Who knows?
That's so funny.
But he's similar to you because you have unlimited stamina until you hit a wall and collapse. The force of nature feeds the human doing in you, and it can be exciting and fun. It's not peaceful, but you get all this force of nature. See, I think I'm fortunate because even though I look pretty good for my age, I have crappy stamina. No, really, I couldn't be a force of nature. So I'm trying to default to being a force of nurture because I get tired. I don't have the stamina, so I can't be a human doing. So, because it's too exhausting.
And, trust me, it is.
no, I know it's exhausting. So, but anyway, we're coming towards the end. So tell people where they can find you, and we'll sign off. And all my listeners, I get to continue with Jennifer Hill as you should, and maybe compare your journeys to the one she's on and one of the ones we talked about. So Jennifer, tell people where they can find you.
Yeah, thank you, Mark. So you can find me on my business website, which is metabizics, metabizics.com. You can also tune in on Mondays at 4 p.m. Pacific time to LA Talk Radio to the Get Yourself the Job show, or you can also find the show on iTunes, and you'll also find the episodes that Mark and I did if you put in his name with Get Yourself the Job. And I also host a Coalition for Global Unity meditation every Monday at noon Pacific time on awaketvnetwork.live. It's free to join us. We have so many wonderful teachers around the world: Michael Beckwith, Deepak Chopra, Roland McCready of Heart Math. You're certainly welcome to come and join us if you'd like to facilitate a meditation, Mark. I feel like just listening to you would be meditative, but we have a whole list of teachers you can find at coalition, 4, globalunity.com. And it's your dear friend, Mark. I'm so grateful and happy to have you in my life.
No, same here. So to our listeners, Jennifer and I are happy to have you in our lives in this podcast, and I'll always end the way I always do. Life is filled with wake-up calls. Not everybody wakes up. Never beat up on yourself for not waking up, because there's going to be another one coming your way. And, sooner or later, just grab onto one of the wake up calls and ride that pony as far as it'll take you. And take good care of yourself. Be safe. Until next time, this is Dr. Mark and my good friend Jennifer. Take good care, and we'll see you again.